Okay, so when you picture Saudi Arabia, what comes to mind? Probably oil, right? Endless deserts and just immense wealth. But behind all that, there's a really stark reality. Today, we're going to get into the kingdom's most ambitious project yet, a plan to build a massive artificial river in one of the driest places on the entire planet. I mean, it's a wild paradox when you think about it, isn't it? Imagine having all the money in the world, a palace literally made of gold, but you're desperately short on the one thing you need to survive: water. This is the challenge that's pushed Saudi Arabia to attempt one of the greatest engineering feats of our time. And this number? This is the core of the whole problem. 0. That is the number of natural permanent rivers in the entire country, not one. In the largest country in the Middle East, there's not a single river. So let's really break this down. You've got a kingdom where 98% of the land is scorching hot desert. You get almost no rain, and on top of all that, the population is just exploding. That's a recipe for a serious, serious water crisis. And this is where it gets kind of crazy. Just look at the mismatch here. The population has skyrocketed from 3 million to over 26 million people. But the capital, Riyadh, gets a measly 116 millimeters of rain a year. To put that in perspective, London gets more than 5 times that. So, what have they been doing? How have they survived? Well, for a long, long time, the answer wasn't on the surface. It was deep, deep underground. They started tapping into these ancient water reserves that had been trapped down there for millennia. This stuff is literally called fossil water. And the name says it all, right? It's ancient. This isn't like a lake that gets refilled by rain every year. This is water that's been sitting there for millions of years. Once you pump it out, that's it. It's gone for good. Yeah, this quote just nails it. It really is like using a battery that you can never, ever recharge. And for a while, something like 70% of the country's water came from this source. So the big question is, what on earth were they using all this precious non-renewable water for? You might be surprised by the answer. It was wheat. Yeah, they decided to grow wheat in the middle of the desert. And for a while, it worked incredibly well. But eventually, the bill came due. By 2016, NASA satellites showed something terrifying. Those ancient aquifers were draining at a rate of 2 trillion liters a year. The dream of greening the desert had become an absolute nightmare for their water supply. And just look at where it all went. An absolutely staggering 85% of that one-time use fossil water was poured directly onto farms. That's just unsustainable. So they had to make a hard choice. They shut down the wheat program and pivoted to a new, even more ambitious idea. If the water underground was running out, well, they'd just have to make their own. And that brings us to the main event, their absolutely mind-blowing solution. If nature won't give you a river, you build one yourself. And we're not talking about just one big pipe here. This is a massive, countrywide network, almost like a circulatory system of water for the entire nation. To really wrap your head around just how massive this project is, check this out. The plan is for a network of underground pipes stretching 12,000 kilometers. That is nearly twice the length of the Nile River. You know, the longest river on the planet. And it's all built underground, so the brutal desert sun doesn't just evaporate it all away. So what's the goal of this whole thing? To pump 9.4 billion liters of fresh water across the country every single day. Okay, but wait. If there are no rivers and the ancient wells are a no-go, where is all this water coming from? Well, there's one place they have plenty of: the ocean. The magic here is a process called desalination, and they have 2 main ways of doing it. First up is multi-stage flash. Basically, you boil salt water, the pure water turns into steam, you collect that steam, and then cool it back down into fresh water. Sounds simple, right? Now imagine doing that in hundreds of steel tanks the size of football fields. The scale is just immense. Then there's the newer, more high-tech method, reverse osmosis. This is seriously cool. Instead of heat, it uses insane amounts of pressure to push seawater through a special membrane. Think of it like the world's finest filter. The holes are so tiny that only water molecules can squeeze through, leaving all the salt, minerals, and other gunk behind. What you get on the other side is perfectly pure water. Okay, so this all sounds amazing, right? Problem solved. Well, not so fast. Every solution seems to create a new problem. When you take billions of liters of salt out of the ocean, you have to do something with all that leftover salt. All right, remember this number? 9.4 billion liters of fresh water every day. It's an incredible achievement, but making it leaves something nasty behind. Yeah, it leaves behind this 329,000 metric tons of super concentrated toxic salt waste. We call it brine. And that's every single day. That number is so big, it's hard to even picture. So let's try this. That's the same weight as 1,645 blue whales. Yeah, the largest animal to ever live on Earth. They're producing that much waste daily. So what do you do with it? Well, for now, the answer has been to just dump it back into the sea. And this isn't just salty water. It's super salty, often much warmer, and it's wreaking havoc on marine life. It's creating these dead coral zones in the Red Sea, basically suffocating entire ecosystems. So here we are again. They solved the freshwater crisis, but in doing so, they've created a massive environmental one. But the story doesn't stop there. The same ingenuity that's building this artificial river is now being aimed at its toxic byproduct. And they're not ignoring it. They're looking at some really innovative solutions. Things like deep sea diffusers that spread the brine out so it's not so concentrated. But the coolest idea is something called brine mining. They're figuring out how to extract valuable stuff like magnesium and potassium right from the waste. Think about that. They could literally turn a dangerous pollutant into a profitable resource. That could be a game changer for desalination everywhere. Okay, but there's one last huge hurdle to talk about: energy. All this water doesn't just flow by itself. It has to be pumped across thousands of kilometers, and sometimes straight up 10,000-foot mountains. The pumping stations for this whole operation use a whopping 9% of the entire country's electricity. That is an enormous energy bill. The next big challenge is figuring out how to power all of this sustainably, probably by tapping into the one thing they have more of than oil: sun. All of this culminates in something that is just perfectly symbolic. In 2027, the World Water Forum will be hosted by Saudi Arabia. The one country on Earth with zero natural rivers is positioning itself to be the world leader in water technology. It's an incredibly bold statement. And that really leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Saudi Arabia is making a massive bet that human ingenuity can overcome one of nature's most basic limits. It's a testament to what we can build, for sure. But it also makes you wonder, can we really engineer our way out of any problem? And more importantly, should we?